Hi, my name is Brandy. I wanted to share with you some of the things that I've done in my grief process to help myself and my family. My daughter wanted to be part of this video. She is going to share some of the things about her brother and things that she's learned and things that she's doing to move through her own grief journey. Quickly, I'm going to mention a couple of things, really good organizations that you can find help from. One that I'm involved with is SIDSamerica.org. It's a really good resource for music that you may find interesting to listen to. Sometimes people are not able to listen to music at all for a while. That's certainly understandable. I don't think it's uncommon either. Mend.org, which is Mommy's Enduring Neonatal Death. Also, mygriefandloss.com. SIDSfamilies.com. That's a very extensive resource for mothers to have an outlet to their grief and a way to type out messages to their children. Sometimes it just helps to say what you need to say and have it in a written form. SIDS.org and also griefshare.org. Griefshare is throughout the United States, but several churches use that program, and I found even in our area there's probably about 30 meetings per city. So from what I've looked up so far. But I was going to ask Kyla a couple of questions, and we'll just kind of go from there as far as things that she's feeling and what she's found useful. Do you want to kind of describe some of the balloon release, how that may have helped you or how you felt while you were doing that?
When we have our balloon releases, I usually get a little dump truck and we write messages on them and release them into the sky.
She's talking about a dump truck shaped balloon.
Balloon, yeah. And we go ahead and let those float up there to heaven. Maybe Trace sees them and reads them.
Some of the one of the programs that Kyla's in is through the Warm Place. It's actually in Fort Worth, Texas. We are very fortunate to have a place that the kids can go to get counseling for their grief and to have a form of permission. They are able to color pictures and do projects. Go ahead.
Some of the rules in the Warm Place that I can remember are it's okay to be sad and cry, it's okay to be happy and laugh. And it says respect feelings, and what's said in group is private.
Sometimes we forget to respect the ways that other people grieve, and I have found that a lot of people are just incapable or they have no way to relate to the type of grief that you're going through. Maybe they have not suffered a loss, or they have and they've tried to file that away. Others who have not suffered a loss tend to have their grief box that they put all their grief into, and they pull that grief box out and off the shelf, and they do things for you, or they say certain things, and then they go on their merry way after they've had an encounter with you about your grief, and they put that grief box back on the shelf. With children, it's different in that when it is intermittent in its experience, it can come up at random times and random ages. Things that seem entirely non-related to grief may come up as anger or aggression. for children, or just a sadness or depression. Those are ways that they will process the grief, and it has to be dealt with. Um, we've just chosen this form of dealing with the grief for our families. Do you remember some of the good memories about Trey's? Things that are good?
I could always make him laugh. He could hold my hand. And I could make him laugh a lot. And he would grab my hand, and he was a cute baby.
Very healthy.
But one day he was here,
and the next day he was not here. One of the things about SIDS is that it is very unexpected. Sudden infant death syndrome is very sudden, right in the name. With as far as our story goes, the day that my son passed, I was working at the office, and the area that we were in, my son was another city away, but it was only about a 10-minute drive. And I received the phone call while I was in my office, and my boss called me at work and told me that the police department was looking for me and needed me urgently. And I knew immediately, I had a feeling that the call was not going to be good. I went ahead and called the officer, and they asked me to go drive directly to the emergency room. And I had a friend and coworker drive me to the hospital, fully expecting the worst. And I think that I was already in the panic mode to begin with, but even more so since having lost my brother. We drove really quickly with our emergency lights on, and drove on the sides of the roads to get to the hospital. I will never forget the faces of the nurses and doctors. They asked me to go into a room with a chaplain, and at that point I knew that my son was gone. When they put me behind the closed doors, I immediately started screaming, and it felt like somebody had hit me with sledgehammers on my arms, and my heart was pounding, and my ears started ringing. No, it was, the doctor had to come in and tell me that my son was already gone. At that point, they moved me to the emergency room, and began asking me questions about his diet, and if he was on any medications, and if he had had a cold. There was absolutely no explanation. And yet, since he was in the care of a babysitter, of course everything had to be taken care of through the medical examiner, and it was about 2 days before we finally got word that it was SIDS, that there was no reason at all for that, for him passing away. He had been sleeping on his side, so his airways were open. He didn't have any bedding in the crib with him that could have been, in his face. There were so many questions that I had that have been answered. There was just no reason for it. Then they did rule it SIDS, an infant death syndrome, on the death certificate. That is a lot to take into anyone. And I know that in February, the Journal of American Medical Association, JAMA, came out with that children who have passed away of SIDS do have very low serotonin in their brains. Serotonin affects your mood. It affects your sleeping pattern. It affects your breathing pattern. Um, it affects your whole. It affects your whole mood and your whole and the functions of your body that you're not even aware of. So I had at least something to put it through, but it didn't make it any better. It didn't bring him back. It didn't. The answer is still not what I wanted. Did you want to say something?
When we got home, our neighbors invited us over for dinner. As soon as they invited us in and we ate, I started to suspect something was going on. After dinner, we went to our house.
Me and our Jack. She was just coming home from school when a lot of this happened, and we did have the neighbors pick them up and take them, and they did have dinner over at the neighbors to keep them settled until we were able to break the news to my children.
We all started crying, used up a load of tissues, and it was a moment that everyone was crying.
It was an absolute moment of devastation to have to be the bearer of the bad news to my children, to have to say that your brother is never coming back again.
They won't be coming back.
I would hope that if you have no support, that you would seek support. That you would find help and hope in your friends, in your family. And if you don't have that, that you would find help in doctors or counselors. You're not alone on your grief journey. You're not alone. It's happened to others. It seems that no reason is ever good enough, and it's not. I'll tell you that firsthand as a mother. At some point I'll share with you the story of my brother and how it was I found out the news and the events around his passing. But for now, we just wanted to make sure that you knew from our point of view how it is. And we're okay with talking about it, but there are days that we can't even get through a sentence about talking about Trace. There are days when we just have really low days. And our entire life is not necessarily always consumed with grief. We're not constantly at the graveside. There are parents that do that. We're not constantly smelling his clothes. There are parents that do that. We have decided to keep his passing up for a while. And I understand that's not entirely uncommon. I meet with mothers who have also done that. Just until you're ready to release those things on your own. We enjoy his memories. We appreciate the blessing that he is and has been in our life. And one of the things that Kyla said to us when we placed the memorial marker was his purpose was to love us, and I do honestly believe that. And we were able to love
him back.
And I am so blessed to have taken part in that love. And to have such a loving family to help me through this entire time. So and until we talk to you again or until we see you again, stay strong and be encouraged. And thank you for your time.
Live, love, and laugh.